Fine. We were speaking about this big idea, of course, that is the theme in the past few paragraphs, and that is that in this world we can really come one with God, as opposed to the next world where we are, as we said, just spectators of the stage of God. Of course, enjoying the great light of God that maybe is more revealed. But in this world, each time we do a mitzvah, we study Torah, we become one with God. Now that a connection with God is a connection that is only achievable in this world. It might be God interacting with us, as we said, with multiple clothes, right? But that hug is the same hug, no matter how many clothes the king is wearing. And here God is indeed concealed with many clothes, but that mitzvah is what gives you the opportunity to give God a hug. That is achieved with Torah and mitzvot, and therefore, right, the ethics of our father says it's important to remember, I think this is the underlying theme of all of these teachings, that yafa sha'a achat b'tshuva u'ma'asim tovim, better 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world than the entire world to come. That has been really the big idea, the dominant idea. So let's just continue here on page 139, right, Margot? 139.
Yes,
here.
correct.
Who wants to read? And although the Torah. Anyone?
I'll read.
Okay.
Yay, Jordan.
All right. And although the Torah has been clothed in lowly physical things, again and again we return to the paradox that to study Torah and fulfill mitzvot is to involve oneself with mundane and material things, oxen and donkeys, wool and linen, and so on. Granted that man's connection and identification with the mundane is indeed complete. A person who gives charity becomes at that moment a tool for the mitzvah of charity. The man who puts on tefillin becomes an implement of the mitzvah of tefillin, which could not have been fulfilled without a physical human arm. One who studies a page of Talmud dealing with an ox and a donkey can fully grasp and comprehend his subject. These things are familiar to him, and he can therefore fully identify with the problems under discussion. But however complete his grasp, he has grasped material things. How can we say that this, however profound, is of the essence of the divine wisdom?
Right. And that's really the paradox, because if we are trying to connect our soul with God, then how can that be done with materialistic things? Because the body, in a way, is the enemy of the soul. The body wants completely different desires. So how can the body really become that vehicle to connection when it's really, in essence, an opposition to that connection? You know, it says that Hillel, I mean, there's multiple stories in the Talmud, two come to mind, but Hillel, the great sage of, the year 100 BCE, who was known for his love to every person. But Hillel, when he would go and shower, when he would go to, they had no showers then, they had bathhouses. When we go to the bathhouses of Israel, he would say that I am going to perform tremendous kindness to this despicable one, Aluvazot. And he would refer to his body. This body is despicable. By going to the bathhouse, I need to do it. So I'm going to do some kindness to this despicable one. So I'm just thinking of that line, because in a way the body is indeed despicable. I mean, it's a body, and it's materialism, and it's flesh and blood. And there's really, at least seemingly, nothing holy about the body. So that's really the question, trying to understand this paradox. We are saying that, no, it's with the body that you can reach that ultimate level of connection with God. But how could it be with the body when the body is the despicable one? And the body really has completely different desires. That's the big question. Why don't you continue just a little bit more, and then we'll develop this idea. Go ahead.
Sure. The author's answer is that these things, however lowly and material, are indeed the will and wisdom of God. They are not a reflection of his will, but are his will itself, translated into the language of the material. The Torah itself does not undergo change. Rather, it descends by hidden steps from level to level, assuming at each level the garments that relate to that plane of reality. Within these garments, however, is the Torah itself, which is one with God and remains his unadulterated will and wisdom at every level. One can say that the Torah undergoes a series of translations, a translation into the language of the seraphim, a translation into the language of the angels, a translation into the language of the soul that resides in the physical body, languages that are merely garments for the essence of Torah, which remains unchanged at all levels.
Right. So that's one answer. There'll be multiple answers to this question. One answer is that the essence of the connection is not diminished by enclothing or by being in a body, or by using a body in order to connect to God. It's almost like I would use the analogy of a parent, right? So I know this quite well. I have a 3-year-old at home, and I also have a 20-year-old. My language with the 3-year-old is very different than the language I have with the 20-year-old. With 20-year-old, maybe it's a more exposed language. It's a more honest and transparent language. The 3-year-old have to go down to his level. Now, does that mean that the level of connection is any smaller or more diminished with the 3-year-old? No, not at all. The love is the same love. The connection is the same connection. But you have to use, different tools in order to be able to connect. Same here, God, in order to connect to us, he needed to clothe himself in different tools, in materialism, so that he would be able to connect to the lowly state of this world and to us in this lowly state of this world. But the level of connection is really the same level of connection as if he was speaking to the highest of highs, and that's one answer. So the body is not an enemy to the soul, just to summarize this answer, because it's used. God uses it as we can use it. Just as God uses this world as a vehicle to himself, so too we can use our body as a vehicle to our soul. Okay, and
but the body can be an enemy to the soul.
Absolutely, that's right. Could be an enemy, and it takes a lot of training to transform this body into a vehicle for the soul. But nonetheless, it can be done. So that's one answer. Another answer is an answer he alluded to before, and maybe he's going to touch upon here, and that is that this connection between God and the human being with his body is a connection that can be actually higher than the connection of the higher worlds, because we have the power to not only use our body as a vehicle for the soul, but in a way that it becomes such a vehicle to the soul that the body is transformed into a soulful entity. The soul has impacted the body so much that the body itself now is holy. And therefore, not only is it in opposition to the soul, but it is also now an additional layer of holiness that the person has. That, I think, is what the righteous do. When you see the righteous, and by the way, that's why they say that, and the stories like that, story like that about Rabbi Levi Tzchak Berditchev, but that the righteous don't decompose. After they die and they are interred, they don't decompose. Most people do, but they don't, because their body has become so holy that now it's a whole different entity. It's not physical anymore. There's stories like that about how cemeteries were moved in Russia. Rabbi Levi Tzchak Berditchev's cemetery was moved in Russia. In fact, there was a story like that not too long ago, I think in Israel, but where they discovered after 150 years that Rabbi Levi Tzchak Berditchev's body was still intact. They had to move the body, that the Russians, the communists, forced the Jews to dig out the graves, right? Exactly. And they saw that he was as if they had buried him that day. Now,
wow.
There might be other explanations, but from this perspective, it makes sense, because these righteous people have transformed their body. That those bodies were not just vehicles, but they were transformed into yet another layer of holiness. And that takes much more training than answer number one. But on the other hand, it's also achievable. And I believe that the more we use our arms, for example, with tefillin, or to give tzedakah, the more we use our feet to run to do good things, the more that part of the body becomes holier and holier. That's why I know that the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, Rabbi the Rabbi Menachem Schneerson of blessed memory, was big into this. That when a person has part of his body injured, he would tell you, well, then do a mitzvah with that part of the body, because what that mitzvah does, and it's something that the eye cannot see, but something that's astounding. And what a mitzvah does is that it brings strength, holy strength, to that part of the body that is being used for the mitzvah. So when I wear tefillin on my left arm, which is the example used here, then my left arm becomes stronger. There's apparently computer programs like this. I don't know how accurate they are. I was reading about it, but it doesn't change my beliefs in this. But still, it's interesting to note that computer programs that can pick up the energy waves of a person. And it's interesting that when a person does a mitzvah, the part of the body that is performing that mitzvah all of a sudden has enhanced energy waves, which express itself with different colors or whatever it may be. But that's, again, maybe because, again, we don't need science to confirm this truth that maybe cannot be confirmed. But again, when we do a mitzvah with any part of our body, that body now becomes not just a vehicle, but eventually can become holy in and of itself.
Rabbi,
yes, William.
I like the Talmudic story where a person sinned and the body blamed the soul and the soul blamed the body. And they compare that, it's a parable where a blind man and a cripple are guarding a vineyard of a king, and the cripple figures out that if he climbs on the back of the blind man, he could get the fruit from the tree. So the king comes and sees that all the fruits are missing, and he figures out what happened. So he puts the cripple on the blind man, and he judges them as one.
That's it. That's a great story. That's right. About a king, he said, "I don't trust anybody." It's interesting because we think that the higher you rise in power, the more secure you seem to be. It's usually the opposite. The higher you rise in power, the more insecure you are. Maybe that's why you sought power in the first place, because of your insecurity. So anyway, there was a king who was completely insecure and he wouldn't trust anyone. And he needed to guard his vineyard. He was afraid of thieves, right? This is what William is saying here. And it's a beautiful parable. And so he had a great idea. He said, I'm going to hire two people. One who's crippled, because like this, he won't be able to walk to my grapes and eat them, but he'll be able to serve as the eyes to watch if robbers are coming. And one who's blind, so that if there is a robber that comes, then the crippled guy will be able to tell the blind guy, hey, run to this guy and chase him away. But on the other hand, the blind guy also won't know where the grapes are because he's blind. So he thought he found the perfect solution. When he came back, all these grapes were eaten.
Yeah.
He's trying to figure it out. And then he realized, oh, okay, I know what they did. They're guilty. The blind man told the crippled guy, look, I'll put you on my shoulders. You tell me where the grapes are, and we'll enjoy the grapes together. You'll be my eyes, and we'll steal. Now, in a way, it's a beautiful parable for the body and the soul, because the body and the soul separated, they themselves are also handicapped. The soul can't do a mitzvah without a body. It really can. You can't give tzedakah and put on tefillin or whatever other example is used, or whatever example you can think of. On the other hand, the body also doesn't know what a mitzvah is without the soul. So they team up together to perform this great holy work. And it's like the blind and the crippled coming together. Beautiful story. You're right. Thank you for reminding us of it. Yeah. So that's another, I think it's a beautiful story again, because it emphasizes this point that the body can become a vehicle to the soul. And it's carried by the soul. That's really why, I mean, one of the great agonies of the soul It's interesting because the Mishnah says, there's a powerful Mishnah that says, Al kochacha atanolad, al kochacha tachai, al kochacha tamet, al kochacha ten din v'cheshbon, which means against your will you are born, against your will you live, against your will you die, and against your will you will give an account of all your deeds in this world. Right? When you face the ultimate betting. By the way, Rabbi Shlomo would say, God is giving us so many things against our will, it's not fair. So he suggests to God, I've heard him say that many times, he suggests to God, against our will, we are born, fine, we'll swallow that. Against our will, we live, we'll swallow that too. Against our will, we'll die, we'll even swallow that. But against our will, we'll have to give an account to the Almighty about all of our deeds. Please, God, just give that one up for us. We won't need to give an account. There's too many.
Or not. Or we may be very pleased with the account that we're going to give.
Yeah, but still, whether you're pleased or not, you know, when you have even if you know that you're gonna win.
There's no winning. There's no winning or losing. It just is.
Right. But against you, would you pick that by yourself?
Yes.
You would.
Yes, absolutely.
No, not for you. I'm talking about for humanity. Would you have?
Yes, I would for them too. And I'd like them to be there.
All right, very good. You remind me of Rabbi Levi Tzchak Avaditchev, who would say that on Rosh Hashanah, he doesn't understand why everyone is afraid and so on, because it is the day of judgment. But we also know that the judge is our Father.
And it's time for them to meet their Father. And once they do, then they won't be afraid.
Okay, I wish I could get to that level. That's
Rabbi, as an accountant, I learned a long time ago, when you talk about accounting, figures lie and liars figure.
Figures lie, liars figure.
Very
Interesting.
And what is a lie anyway? In
Yeah.
whose eyes is it a lie?
Yeah.
Whose eyes?
Yeah. But just to go back to the idea, okay, so we're saying that against our will, so it might be against our will, but on the other hand, also, once we learn how to live, right? Once we are born and then we learn how to live, and then we realize that we could achieve in this world much more than we could have achieved in the previous world. So even though the soul does not want to come down, the soul is living in this state of eternal bliss, but once it comes down to this world and experiences indeed the world of mitzvahs, and this idea that the body can become a vehicle to the soul and in a way be transformed by the soul, then it changes its mind. Then, maybe it was worth coming down after all.
And isn't this why we come to this class? To learn that?
I suppose so. I mean, you tell me why you come to this class. Yes. But certainly the soul, I come to this class because of my soul, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're right, Ron. Yeah. That's why the whole idea really of, and it's described, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of Hasidic teachings just based on this idea. The whole idea of the descent of the soul to this world is coined as Yerida Letzorech Aliyah, which means it's a descent in order to ascend. God wouldn't cause a person to descend just to descend. If there's no ascent that is even greater than the level we were at before, then the descent is not worth it. So the only reason God sends us to this world is for us, through this world, to be able to achieve an ascent that leads us to a much higher place than we were before we came down to this world. That's the idea. How do we do that? With the body, and with this despicable one, as we said. How? By training it to become a vehicle, and in a way, by transforming it itself. Yeah. And by the way, I just want to develop this idea a little bit, because I think it has amazing educational implications. And that is that at the end of the day, the human being is a soul that is struggling in a body. But very often we define the human being as a body that is struggling without knowing that it's the soul that's pushing the body in all sorts of ways, and the body doesn't know what to do with the soul. So we can't seem to, and the body, of course, is more expressive than the soul. That's what we see. So we can't seem to find that soul, and we just judge the body as a body. But the real educators know that when the body is agitated, to say the least, when the body is performing in all sorts of awkward ways or even terrible ways, it's simply because there's a soul there that is moving it, it's driving it, and the body again is not accustomed to a soul, so doesn't know what to do. That's why they say that I was moved by this, but my sister surprised me from Argentina just a few days ago, and she's here until tonight. But Tanya, and many of you know that about 2.5 years ago, Jordan knows this because we spoke many times about this, and thank you for your help also in that regard, Jordan. But she almost died giving birth to him, lost a ton of blood, and this Baruch Hashem, she survived, the baby survived, but today is in a semi-vegetative state. And they, they still have tremendous faith that hopefully he'll have a refuah shlema. But she was telling me yesterday, just to get to the point, she was telling me yesterday that she really believes, and what keeps her going, is this idea that sometimes souls are so big that no body can really contain them. And when they finally do come down in the body is so shattered by the soul that it creates some type of disability. And I thought it was a beautiful idea. I still have to chew on it. But I think it's true in the context of what we're saying. The soul does create some type of in the body. The body sometimes just doesn't know what to do with it. So it shuts down or it reacts in all sorts of bizarre ways. But again, proves the point that the soul makes an impact in our body. And then the question is, how will our body respond? Too often we come and we dismiss the body. Oh, he's disabled. Disabled, not just physically sometimes, disabled maybe not physically, but emotionally or psychologically. You must have a problem. But we fail to realize that there's a tremendous soul here that came down to this body. And in a way, that's why the body is affected. Because it wants the body to be a vehicle, but it's too great of a soul.
And those great souls are not for the body, but for all of us to be around. The light that comes from them, we can feel by being with them.
Right. Very good. Well said. That's exactly what you were saying. The impact, this little baby who doesn't speak, hasn't emitted a cry since he was born. But this baby has transformed their city. Everyone comes to visit him. People, first of all, can't believe he's lived so long. But more than that, there's something special about him, this light that shines from within that people are just moved by. In fact, to the point that she was telling me, and that proves this point, that about a month ago, they've gone to thousands of treatments with him, and they have a 24/7 nurse at home and so on. But this volunteer that had come to help with something with the baby about 2 years ago, shortly after he was born, 2 months ago, came back to my sister and said, look, I know we haven't spoken in a long time, but your baby has made such an impact on me when I was volunteering to help him that I came today to ask him for a blessing. I have a very important job interview and I need to see him. I need to be with him so that he can bless me. This is not even a Jewish man, right? It's not some Argentinian guy. And that's the impact he's had.
Beautiful.
But again, I think this all stems from the idea that we're speaking about, that this body is impacted. This body that we have is impacted by the soul. Now the question is if we can use it, right? Use the body and train it so that it becomes a vehicle for that soul. That's the big question. There's a cute story again about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, blessed memory, who was reading about it yesterday. But was so cute and so powerful. But about this little girl who was telling that a few decades ago, she went to see the Rebbe on Hanukkah, and her parents had a private audience. And at the end of the meeting, the Rebbe gave this girl a few coins as Hanukkah geld, right? Hanukkah money. And this girl, you know, she takes the coins and she throws it back to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe gives her more coins, throws it right back. And then the third time, throws it right back. She thinks she's playing a game or something. Now, you know, the Rebbe could have said, could have dismissed it politely, or he could have thought, oh, she's rebellious. And look at this. Well, what does it say? But the Rebbe instead immediately after the third time turns to her parents and says, wow, you have a special girl. She's very spiritual because she doesn't crave money. Now, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's the whole shift of perspective. Instead of
Yeah.
you know, some rebellious nature, the opposite. She doesn't crave money. She doesn't want money. She's spiritual. So he saw the soul. And I think it's true in so many encounters we have in life. We can judge the external, we can judge the internal. Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Any other ideas, comments, thoughts?
Comment that the purpose of the God soul, if our body allows it to, teach it, as you said before, to bring it in harmony with our heart, with our ego, with everything about us. The God's, if we can listen to our God soul and trust it, it can bring us a long, long way.
Right. Very nice. Beautiful. Jordan, you have to tell me about those birds behind you. What are they?
Rats with wings.
Oh, I love it. You see?
Yeah, no, they're mourning doves is what they are.
Oh, morning dog. Okay.
Most of them. There's some house finches.
Yeah.
We've got cardinals here, but they haven't shown up yet this morning, so still waiting.
Mm.
Very nice.
Rabbi, I would just add, you know, we're talking about the impact of this beautiful baby in Argentina and on the community, and I would just add, you know, the impact that your sister has had on so many, not just locally there, but through her communications, through, you know, social media, and the way she has just shown the most unconditional love and faith and spirituality and in you know dealing and managing this amazing challenge that came upon her and the family. You know, we've been privileged to follow that, Anna and I, and every time we can't help but being moved. So it's the
Right.
baby, but it's also the impact of the baby and what's happened and how your sister has channeled that in a way that has lifted all of us in that ascent, as you were talking about.
I passed that on to her. I was telling her, and I think it's a lesson in of itself. Maybe we'll conclude with that. But that there's a beautiful essay that was written by a woman who gave birth to also a disabled child, or we shouldn't call them disabled, of course, or special needs child, as they say. But she wrote an essay called "Welcome to Holland." I don't know if you've ever seen it. But she gives the analogy of preparing for a trip to Italy. Before the trip, she learned about all of the places that she was going to visit, the maps, the architecture, the history, everything about Italy. And then she finally took off. And when they landed, all of a sudden the pilot says, "Welcome to Holland." And she says to someone, I thought I was going to Italy.
Yeah.
Why Holland now? But she couldn't change the plans. I mean, the pilot took her, she doesn't have another plane to go to. So she had a decision to make. Should I just be frustrated about the fact that I went to Italy, that I did not go to Italy? Or should I just embrace this new country I'm in and start learning about it? She decided to start learning about the maps and the new touristic attractions in Holland and so on and so forth. And in a way, that's what happened to her. And that's what happened to my sister, no doubt, also. She thought she was going to Italy. And then the book came out and she came to Holland. But to really, to the credit and to the tremendous reflection of her soul that this is, she didn't think twice. When God told her, welcome to Holland, she said, okay, I'm on board. Let me stay in Holland.
Beautiful.
And really, it's an inspiration, yeah.